Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Cocktails with Conductors. I'm Peter Wilson, one of your co-hosts. I'm the music director of the Richmond Philharmonic. This whole thing is brought to you by the Richmond Philharmonic Orchestra, located in Richmond, Virginia. And my wonderful co-host is the outstanding assistant conductor of the Richmond Philharmonic, Mr. Will Pattie. Will, good evening to you. Uh-oh, Will, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I'm on so many Zoom calls all day long. Hi, everyone. Will Pattie here, your assistant conductor of the Richmond Philharmonic. Thank you, Peter. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to finally get this going. I'm really excited for what we're about to do.
Yes, this is awesome. Can't wait to dive into all things related to orchestras. And that will be our one and only technical glitch this evening, of course, you being muted for 10 seconds there. I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing, speaking of technical things, our amazing technical wizard this evening, Jen Myers, our vice president of the Richmond Philharmonic, who is making this all happen on Facebook through Zoom and everything. And she's just amazing at what she does. So thank you, Jen. She's going to stay quiet through the evening. But she's going to be monitoring all the comments and questions. We want to encourage all of you out there to write any questions or comments that you have pertaining to orchestras. Maybe they have to do with conducting, but maybe they have to do with programming or how orchestras operate in general and that sort of thing. We want this to be a lot of fun, just talking about all those kinds of topics. In future episodes, we're going to be having some guests coming. The first guest that's lined up in 2 weeks is going to be Erin Freeman, the wonderful maestra, and she's also the artistic director of Wintergreen Music Festival, among many other things, but we'll get to that later. This is going to be held every other Monday evening at 7 o'clock, 7 to 8. This is our first episode, and we're going to have 7 episodes between now and December. So we're so excited that you're all joining us. It's great to see you, Will. And so let's kick things off here with making a cocktail, shall we? I guess first, yeah, what do you want to say?
Could I say, before we go into the cocktail, the exciting part, I just want to say a great thank you to the folks at Town Bank for their dedicated and loyal support for well over a decade. So thank you so much for your support.
I'm going to fill a glass. My shaker, in fact. Get started. The best sound in the world, right? Putting ice in the glass.
Yeah, especially for audio. That's great over the internet.
That's right, exactly. Well, I should say a little bit about how this idea got started. So I think it's pretty understandable to say that this was inspired partly by our current situation of COVID. We haven't been able to get together as the Richmond Philharmonic in rehearsal. We decided to postpone the start of our season, which wouldn't be surprising to most musicians around the world who have had to deal with this. Some orchestras have been diving in with really good physical distancing on stage and wearing masks in rehearsals and performances. I know a lot of people are eager to get out there. We just felt that it was, would be good to just hold off a little bit. So we thought of this idea. I think this kind of also stemmed from some Zoom chats that Will and I were having with board members. And I was noticing that Will and I were always bringing a cocktail to the Zoom meeting. And then, of course, Will and I get into these really geek out sessions of talking about all things orchestra related. And some people were commenting on how wow, you guys really have a thing going on here. This is fantastic. Why don't you, take this on the road, so to speak? So that's kind of, that's where this all kind of stemmed from. So with that, I guess we should give a little background on ourselves. So really quickly, as I said, I'm the music director of the Richmond Philharmonic. I'm also the music director of the Waynesboro Symphony, which is also in Central Virginia. I am a recent retiree of the President's Own United States Marine Band. I just completed 30 years as a violinist with the Marine Band. performing in all different kinds of ensembles, but primarily the Marine Orchestra stationed at the White House. So that's been a lot of fun. I've been playing for 5 different presidents over the years, and that's been very exciting. And I have to say that continuing to be a violinist while being a conductor has really informed both areas of my musical life. My being a conductor informs my violin playing, and certainly being a violinist informs my being a conductor with all of the perspective that's involved there. So Will, tell us a little bit about you.
I am the assistant conductor of the Richmond Philharmonic, but I'm also the head conductor of the VCU Health Orchestra, orchestra out of the VCU hospital system made up of doctors and nurses and medical students and staff out of the hospital. And I'm also a music teacher for Echo County. Besides conducting, I have a passion for general music education. And I would say, Peter, that general music education has informed my conducting, and my conducting has informed the way I would even teach young children how to sing. It's been a real joy to see those two parallels as well. So I really enjoy being able to exercise both parts of my professional mind, from professional rehearsals with orchestras to teaching young people the foundations of music. And it's been really a joy to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, and now
yeah.
we first met at Catholic University when I think I had been brought in by the conductor David Searle to help out with a master class in conducting. I think you were a student in that class, right? And then we got reconnected because you also play the trombone and you were subbing with the Richmond Philharmonic, right?
It wasn't. Yeah, as an undergraduate, at VCU, I remember attending Richmond Philharmonic rehearsals and thinking, wow, there are 2 great orchestras in the city of Richmond. And then as I got older and came back to Richmond, I started as a substitute trombone player. One thing led to another, and then eventually the opportunity for assistant conductor came up. But it was really cool to see you after that first rehearsal and be like, we remember each other as conductors. It was great.
Yeah, this is awesome. So you mentioned the Richmond Symphony. Of course, they're the sort of the known orchestra in the Richmond area, and we like to call ourselves the best kept secret in Richmond, the Richmond Philharmonic. So when we get playing, of course, we're gonna let everybody know, and we'll get back on the horse, as it were. We're coming up on our 50th birthday in the RPO, and we're gonna have hopefully a big blowout season when that all happens. So, with that, speaking of celebrating, let's celebrate with a cocktail, shall we? I'm going to make the first cocktail tonight, and this is going to be the world famous Tommy's Margarita, and this was invented by Julio Bermejo, who is the tequila ambassador to the United States, happens to be a friend of mine. He is the chief bartender at Tommy's Mexican restaurant in San Francisco. And he basically, this is really a reinvention of the margarita itself. And what Julio felt was important about margaritas was, of course, the tequila. And if you're really a tequila connoisseur, you really want to be tasting the tequila in your margarita. So he decided to take out the orange liqueur, or the mix that a lot of bartenders have been putting in for years. And he basically simplified it and decided we're going to go with just the sweet, which he chose to be agave syrup, and the sour, which is fresh squeezed lime juice, which is the key here. So I saved us a little bit of time, and I cut up a whole bunch of limes and squeezed a ton of lime juice because I'm prepared tonight. And so I'm going to start things out here with the... it's going to be, I always make 2 margaritas together because you either have someone with you or you know you're going to have more than one, right? So there you go. Here we are. We're going to make 2 tablespoons of light agave syrup, whichever way you say it, whichever part of the country, okay? And then 2 tablespoons of water. There you go. Continues to lighten that. Then 4 tablespoons of the fresh squeezed lime juice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Coming to you live from Crozet, Virginia, by the way. I'm probably going to be coming to you live from different locations on each of these episodes because I'm a world traveler. Okay, so the next ingredient will be the tequila itself, the main ingredient, and this is going to be a half cup. And tonight I am using, in honor of my good friend Julio Bermejo, El Tesoro Blanco. Julio happens to be married to some tequila royalty. I think this is one of her brothers that makes this particular tequila. Okay, we pour this all over ice and get my shaker, and the top of the shaker is over here. And should I mute for a second just so I can shake this up? Here we go.
Bad idea. That sound would be really intense.
And we're back. Okay, and we're gonna take our margarita glass. I'm gonna put a few more ice cubes in here just to keep it very cold. And we're pouring. And there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the Tommy's margarita.
Oh my goodness. It's so simple.
In honor of our first episode, episode 1, our pilot, we're calling Cheers. Cheers to everyone out there. And please donate to the Richmond Philharmonic.
Oh, absolutely. Don't forget to hit that donate button.
That's right. Oh, wow, that is good. Okay.
Bravo.
Well, what's your drink?
Oh man, I would say when we were having our meetings this summer, I was going through sort of a cocktail renaissance. I was from the city of DC when I was doing my master's degree, and that's when the cocktail boom kind of started happening, and bars were popping up and bartenders were popping up, and there were speakeasies that you could get to go into that were really fun, sliding doors that you'd have to get special reservations for, and it was amazing to see that happen. But this summer, had some time on my hand. I had a birthday coming up, so I ended up buying some supplies. And I found that I really enjoy the spirit of mezcal. I'm not sure how many mezcal people are out there, but mezcal is one of those drinks that I can drink straight, neat, with ice, not with ice. I just really enjoy the flavor of it. And wouldn't you know, mezcal goes into a lot of cocktails. So the cocktail I'm making tonight is called the Division Bell. And after doing a lot of trial and error with different mezcals, I liked this one because it incorporated mezcal, but it also incorporates lime as well, and Aperol, one of my favorite other spirits. It's like Campari, but less intensely bitter, a little more sweet.
Okay.
And also another fun thing, which is Luxardo. Luxardo, excuse me. This is one of those maraschino liqueurs. I find that it just adds a lot of booze to whatever you're trying to make. So if you want to add some depth, some weight to any cocktail you're trying to make, that's a good one to go with. So I'm going to go ahead and mix mine together. I found that there's this glass. I really like mixing cocktails in.
Oh, see, that's high end, man.
It's high end. It comes with its own strainer. I would say that one of the other things that you missed, though, is I also bought these, the 2 cups that go together.
Oh, love it.
And I've learned that what I've read online is it works, but mainly just for looks. It just looks cool when someone's taking it. I pop it open, but for tonight, I'm going to go with simplicity. And I'm just going to use mine takes a little more mixing together, Peter. So I have to add my ice and be a little more... I have a few things to measure, but this cocktail, I think Jen might be able to put this up in the chat for everyone, comes from a really cool website called Diffords. And if you've not tried that website, I highly recommend it because Diffords is a website for cocktail makers. I've never seen anything like it. It's where I got the idea to get some of these cool things. This is a Japanese measuring device, and it comes with 2 different sizes, and it's measured lined on the inside, so you can actually see how much you're pouring with the numbers there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm going to do 1 ounce of mezcal, and I'm only making 1, Peter, but I guess I could make 2. This conversation might go to a different
now. We're here for an hour.
I'm going to make 1. It's a school night for me still, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and then do 3/4 ounce of Aperol. You could also do Campari if you really like a bitter taste to your cocktails. I find Aperol and Campari to be really fun to mix in and out of cocktails. If one cocktail calls for Campari, try it with Aperol or vice versa because the two are very similar. If it's red and it's Italian, it's going to be bitter. But there's so many different varieties that you can try. And then a 1/2 ounce of Luxardo. And then finally, I will do my lime juice that I did not squeeze ahead of time, so I have to use this fancy tool. Hopefully, most of you have one of these at home. Here you go. And I'm supposed to put a 3/4 ounce in, so I'm going to put just a little bit more than what I just did.
Great minds.
Oh man, look at that. Oh, yours is a teensy bit fancier than mine, it looks like.
Okay. Good.
That was a really good idea to mute. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself because that's going to be pretty.
I'm going to keep drinking while you mute. Good.
Got it.
Outstanding. Okay.
Thank you. And I think the color comes out pretty cool as well. It's a nice sort of pink color. And I'm supposed to garnish this with a grapefruit rind, but I don't have grapefruit. So I'm just going to drink it neat.
Oh, outstanding.
Favorite cocktail.
Will,
Cheers to you, Peter.
here's to you, brother. Cheers. The theme of tonight. Cheers.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that great?
So good.
Okay. How's everybody doing out there? Let's see these comments rolling in here, and and be sure to donate if you enjoy this so far. We hope you're enjoying this. If you have a favorite cocktail, let us know that as well. Or
that'd be great.
A favorite piece of orchestral music, or maybe there's a favorite cocktail that you associate with a favorite orchestral piece of music. Who knows? So, Will, do you have any good questions out there that we
yeah. We were lucky to actually get a few questions that come in since we've been chatting. I thought we might start off with one from someone in our orchestra. This is a question that has a few parts to it. This one comes from Dave Davis, but it has a few other questions that might relate to it as well. One of the big questions is, how do you plan a concert season that keeps your musicians and audience engaged?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
No, I part of being in a associated with a community orchestra, I feel that it's really important to have the community orchestra itself have a voice in the programming, right? So, and you can do this a couple of different ways. I mean, you're partly serving the community itself with the orchestra, but you're also serving the community orchestra members. So, and this is a good tie-in with what we're doing right here, frankly, because part of the inspiration behind Cocktails with Conductors was to also give the outlet for our musicians to come in and join in on this kind of a discussion, right? So, I mean, we're not able to get together on Monday nights, so this is a way for us to get together virtually to have these kinds of conversations, and we thought this would be a fun way to do that. So as far as programming, there are a couple of ways to go about this. I'm a big fan of anniversaries, so I'll often, look through the calendar and find out, I'll go back and, I'll pull up Wikipedia and see what happened in history, maybe 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 200 years ago. I'll also look at composers, see what birthdays there are, obviously, that kind of thing. And then I might find a work or a couple of works that I can then use as a launch pad for creating a program around that, right? If there's a particular piece of music, obviously this year was a big Beethoven year, for example. So we're celebrating Beethoven's 250th birthday this December, and people have been, since last December, really going through the whole year and celebrating in that way. So that's a pretty easy one, right? You can do full concerts of Beethoven. There's really no limit to where you can go there, and we really consider Beethoven to be sort of the father of the modern symphony. So there's a lot of different avenues that can be used there. Obviously, other anniversaries, things like that can be helpful. I think it's also important to try to add concertos, add soloists when possible, because soloists, you want to find pieces that can help the orchestra itself grow, as well as be really fun and engaging for them to play and the audience. And one of the best ways to grow is having soloists, because everybody's used to looking at the conductor, but when you have to also listen to a great soloist, that's really informative to the orchestra itself and audiences. And this is true for both professionals and amateurs. I mean, it's really important to get soloists involved there. So, your sort of standard programming could be overture, concerto, intermission, symphony. That's one sort of typical A plan. But then you can also, mix things up. We've done programs of all overtures, or you can feature some tone poems in there. I also think it's important to try to focus, to try to be diverse in not only styles and time periods, but also different styles in terms of world, covering different areas of the world, right? You could have, I've done Russian programs, and I've tied in different composers from different time periods through that. I did an all French program one time, and it was remarkable how completely different the music sounded, and yet all from the same region of the world. And those are the really exciting concerts, right? Because, if you do an all Mozart concert, well, there you go. You're going to have all Mozart, and that's all great. But sometimes that can be too much of a good thing, right? But when you can have concerts that are not only diverse in time period, but also in styles, it's a great journey for the audience to go through. And again, the orchestra itself, it's a great journey for the orchestra. Anyway, why don't you weigh in here, Will?
Well, I would weigh in and say that I just found out in the chat that Tony, one of our trumpet players, Sita, has a sort of an alternative idea, which is you just kind of you program everything based on how good your trumpets are.
Ah, yes, indeed.
A very trumpet-centered sort of way to program everything seems to be his.
Well, actually, Tony brings up actually a very good point. But it's actually a good point, which is that you have to not only know your audience, but know the orchestra. Because and this is true of even major symphonies. Conductors know who their great principals are. If you're gonna, if you want to do Harold in Italy by Berlioz, you're going to want to make sure your principal violist is just knocking it out of the park all the time, right? And obviously, if you have great principal horn or a great principal trumpet, or you're going to program certain things there that focus on that. And obviously, as you move down to the regional and the community orchestra level, this kind of thing can be exposed a lot more, because you have certain people that are really solid orchestral players, but they might not be particularly good at soloing or feel comfortable with that. And so this is important for the conductor to be talking to the principals. Hey, I'm thinking of programming you might be programming Stravinsky's Firebird. You want to talk to your principal horn player and say, hey, how do you feel about this? And they were like, oh yeah, I've been always wanted to play that. This is great. Let's do this. And you might also know that they have a real knack for soloing, because, as I said, not always all orchestral players are equally good at soloing versus playing the orchestral repertoire. Right. Obviously, there's also the concertmaster chair, which there are plenty of unbelievable concertmaster solos out there. But you might have a concertmaster who is a really good leader, but they don't particularly enjoy playing the solo elements within the orchestral repertoire. So it's really important to have that communication line open, so you're figuring out what best what's best for the group itself. There's never a cookie cutter way of handling these things. And there's certainly plenty of repertoire out there to satisfy all of these needs.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things was when I thought about programming the summer pops for last year, which was a great opportunity for me to think about what the Richmond Philharmonic could do. I came across the theme of having music that represented different regions of the United States, and Appalachian folk music came to mind. And one of my favorite pieces, Ashokan Farewell by Jay Farrar, a famous fiddlist, came up, and I thought, I know that John Turner is a member of our group, a noted folk Scottish fiddler, and I went to him and said, what about this piece? He said, not only am I familiar with it, I've performed it for the creator of the Civil War for PBS, the documentary. The documentarist, he's slipping my mind all of a sudden.
Ken Burns.
Yes, and it was just amazing to have that connection and be like, this is why we have these conversations, and you can build programs based off that communication for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, Jay Ungar's Ashokan Farewell has kind of taken on a life of its own over the years. And that was, a lot of people think it was an old Civil War fiddle ballad, but it wasn't. I mean, Jay Ungar is still with us today, and he wrote this Ashokan Farewell basically for his, he had a fiddle camp, I want to say in upstate New York somewhere, and he wrote this literally as a farewell to the students one year. And Ken Burns, somehow, he was looking for some sort of Civil War fiddle sounding tune, and this is such a hauntingly beautiful tune that everybody has responded to. And Ken Burns is such an amazing director, and he knew that, and he put that in the film. That was in 1990. And just as an aside, while I was in the Marine Band, that was, basically the year that I joined the Marine Band. And within that first year, of course, we started the first Gulf War, and where we were trying to help out Kuwait. And there was this dinner at the Gridiron Club in Washington, D.C., and they always put on this musical review every year, and it's usually connected to current events, and then they have writers that kind of take old songs and rewrite the lyrics to make it fun and that sort of thing, all the current events of the day. And of course, the war kind of took over the theme that particular year. So I was asked to come in and play the Ashokan Farewell in desert camis with a beanie desert cover, and what was interesting about it is that what Ken Burns did in the Civil War series is he had the Ashokan Farewell playing while they read a letter from someone in a bunker, a Civil War bunker. And so what they did here was have me up on a pedestal in desert camis playing while they read from someone who had written a letter home from an M1 tank. And this was the finale of that show. And of course, I was only in the Marine Band for 6 months. I didn't know what I was getting into, but they were like, "You're from West Virginia. You know how to play fiddle, right?" So that's what got me involved there. So I literally have been playing the Ashokan Farewell ever since. It's one of those tunes that is great. So but that program you put together, Will, was fantastic. And I hope that the group gets to play that next year, because you just had such a great variety. Even within American music, there's just such an amazing variety of styles that we can cover there.
Wow. I just want to say one really amazing, that's an amazing story. I did not know your connection with that piece, Peter. I talked to John, but I didn't ask you specifically about your.
Very few orchestras have an amazing world champion Scottish fiddler like John. So we're happy to celebrate him and feature him, no doubt.
I want to point out one more thing that just came in. I just want to say that we have a special donor match tonight. Elizabeth King has said she will match gifts made tonight up to $500.
Holy cow.
You are feeling generous. Match.
You, Elizabeth King. Is there a donation button that we can feature somewhere?
That would be amazing, and that's incredibly generous, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. Yes, the button is up in the chat, Peter, for sure. That's all. Those programming notes are wonderful. Thank you for the Summer Pops opportunity again. I think maybe it might be a good time to ask this question.
Okay.
Sharon Berg asked this one. What are some of the ways you have continued to make music during the time of COVID-19? And what do you miss? Which is a very big and very important question for sure.
This is a great question. Thank you, Sharon. Obviously, this whole program tonight, Cocktails with Conductors, is inspired by the pandemic, by what we're all facing, and it's really brought the whole world together in an odd way. I mean, this has been really troubling on so many levels. I don't want to diminish at all the lives lost in this terrible pandemic. But it also has brought us together. There are a lot of positives that have come out of this COVID situation that we're in. The most difficult thing for those of us who are musicians, professional musicians and amateur musicians, is that we haven't been able to get together. And that, one of the things that I was talking about in terms of us not being able to rehearse on Monday nights with the Richmond Philharmonic is that one of the things that people look forward to is not just playing music together, but just the fellowship that comes with that, right? And so I thought this might be a way that we could sort of help out with that fellowship. Obviously, there are many of us that have had to dive into the whole virtual performance element and try to play with other musicians online. Of course, there's no really good online service that allows people to play from different locations at the same time, just because of the satellite delay. Even the slightest little delay really kind of destroys that ability. But people are able to record, and so there are several different applications out there and computer programs that allow us to do that. And that's been one way I think that people have been able to get together. Obviously, Zoom calls like this, where we've been able to get together and just talk about music and talk about our experiences in music, I think is really important. I think that one of the things that I've been able to do during COVID is I've explored other areas of music that I haven't explored as much, such as composing. I've always kind of wanted to be doing more composing. And the majority of my life has been as a performer. I've done a good bit of arranging over the years, and like written a couple of songs here and there, a couple of pieces for small ensemble. But this really got me sitting down and composing. And this is one of the things that I've told a lot of students. You talk about music education being so important. I've done a lot of these virtual performances online with a duo partner of mine, the bass player Aaron Clay, who we were going to have as a soloist. That was our concert that was actually canceled. He's the principal bass of the Marine Band and the Fairfax and Alexandria Symphonies up in Northern Virginia. It's unbelievable soloist. And of course, a dear friend of mine, and we have done a lot of duo performances with him coming to my house, and we've been performing for students all over the United States. And a lot of the teachers have been asking during those performances, what can you tell us that we can tell our students during COVID that they can do? And I said, one of the most important things, I think, aside from playing their instrument, obviously, as much as they can, is to be creating in some way. And that can be writing poetry, it can be writing prose, it can be writing a song, even learning another instrument. But the important thing is that you're always creating in some way. And it doesn't have to be great. You could be art, you could be, drawing, you could be painting, you could be sculpting, whatever you can do to constantly be creating. Because if you're creating, you're enriching your own soul. And if you're enriching your soul, you're just constantly feeding your own humanity. And that's going to make you a person that can then express something to the rest of the world in some way. Once we can all get back together, it's going to ultimately make you a better artist, a better musician, a better human being. And I think that's really the key to all of this, is that we're just, we're constantly creating, challenging ourselves. Because I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy, because it's not. I mean, what I've tried to do there, it's for myself and trying to create those kinds of opportunities. So Will, what have you done during COVID?
I you really spoke to the probably the biggest thing was, the day before they announced I had a concert, and it felt interesting because the audience was very low in attendance and the air it felt a little bit strange, like something was coming. But initially, the fellowship was the one thing that came back to us. Is it just we have these regular weekly rehearsals that we anchor our lives around, and people that we're used to regularly checking in with, and that was really, it just kind of got ripped away from us for a little bit. So it was great to have the VCU Health Orchestra start weekly meetups, and having the board meetings with Richmond Philharmonic, and just meeting up with people to talk about our experiences too. So the fellowship was a big deal. I just want to also just say that there's a few people that are donating that we just love to say thank you to. For Sydney for her donation,
Yes.
Lynn Hilton for her donation, Kenton Hambrick. Thank you so much, Michelle Lacey. Thank you so much, Jane Kaiser. Again, all these are being matched as well. Thank you so much for donating. We have about 20 minutes left, so maybe we can try and get to a few more questions. But certainly, I'll also just say that I use some of the technology to make a video with VCU Health, one of those combination videos, and I've ended up, that experience actually led me to do the same thing for something at my school. And that technology is going to be kind of a big deal for a little while. A lot of music teachers are venturing into uncharted territory and figuring out how to use these apps to get people and students engaged. There is a lot.
That's the tough part, is that we're all of a sudden, those of us that have been focusing on trying to, be better musicians have suddenly had to become, recording engineers. And it's kind of tough trying to manage all of this, and then the video production and everything. And luckily there are some really great organizations out there that are kind of doing that for us now that have
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Also want to thank ESTJ RVA for the donation as well. Peter, I have a question for you.
Okay.
This is from one of our audience members. Patricia Jump has asked, how has conducting or playing your instruments changed over your lifetime?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. That's really good. Conducting and instrumental playing, we have to kind of separate these two areas because they've had sort of a different evolution. Instrumental playing has been around for a long, long time, obviously centuries, and conducting really only started to evolve as the ensembles started to grow, and there was really a need for someone to lead in the front. And it was usually the concert master, right? They had their bow and they would stand up and they would start the ensemble and then they would continue playing. And obviously once you got much larger into the Beethoven orchestras and then beyond, with Wagner and Strauss and Mahler, then you have so many musicians on stage, and sometimes they can't, completely see the concert master, and somebody needs to be standing up there to lead. But even in the vocation of conducting, you couldn't get a degree in orchestral conducting or any kind of baton conducting, podium conducting, really until kind of the 1980s. It was really considered one of these skills that you might have learned how to do if you were in a music program. People, particularly music education, they were taught, okay, this is how you conduct, and here's a beat pattern, and this is this kind of thing, and you're learning how to cue and that sort of thing. My father is actually kind of old school in this regard. He's a musicologist and he's a conductor himself, but he never got a degree in conducting. But he was always like, well, you just learn the basic techniques, and then it should be all about score study and learning about composers and these kinds of things. And I think there's sort of a balance here. I mean, that's obviously the most important element is learning about the scores, learning about the music, learning about the composers, and all of the instruments for that matter, and how they make sound, and so that you know what you're asking for. But we as conductors, modern day conductors, know that there's a great deal more to it than that. There is a whole element of learning how to express yourself with your hands through gesture, and your face, and knowing how to rehearse and how to break down certain pieces and how to build them back up during a rehearsal situation. And we're all constantly uh, you know, working on our baton technique, because it's you know, it's like a golf game, you know, it's like your swing in golf, right? I mean, every little nuance that you make with your baton means something. And so it's important to respect that, and respect that art of really the art of gesture. And so it's that part is interesting. I will say that with instrumental playing, the biggest change I think that's happened in my lifetime is just simply the enormous jump in level of playing overall with orchestral musicians in particular. Orchestras just sound just incredible nowadays. The overall level of playing is so much better. And an illustration I like to make is with Stravinsky's famous Rite of Spring. That, you know, there are composers that wrote in a certain way to get certain sounds out of certain instruments. And in the case of Stravinsky, very often he was writing for an instrument to make it sound difficult, to make it sound strained, right? And so the very famous opening of the Rite of Spring is this bassoon solo, which is incredibly high. And there's always these jokes that are made that are like, I am not an English horn, this is too high for me, you know, this kind of thing. There's the basic melody. It's so high in the range that most bassoon players from you know, decades and decades ago, who were fantastic bassoon players, really strain to play that, because it's not supposed to be in the general, you know, the normal range of the bassoon. Well, nowadays, and this is actually, you could argue this is true of the whole piece of Stravinsky, which is to say that all of the incredibly difficult rhythms and meters and everything that goes by, when it first came out, you know, Stravinsky meant for that music to be difficult and strained to the ear and to the player, because he wanted that angst in there. And nowadays, the Rite of Spring is so standard in the repertoire that bassoon players just whip it off like it's nothing. I mean, it sounds like anything that they do, so it doesn't sound strained. Another theory that I have about it's like with Mahler 1, with the double bass principal solo that's the slow movement where they play that solo. I mean, it's incredibly rare for the double bass to get a solo in an orchestral setting like that. Right. And now double bass is played. It's actually kind of high also, and double bass is like play that off like it's no big deal. Well, I have a theory that's, you know, it's supposed to be this funeral march, and it's a bit of a sarcastic funeral march too. But I think that the bass was supposed to sound kind of strained and you know, sorrowful and that sort of thing. And so, but how do you tell a bassoonist or a double bass player today to play it, you know, that way? Play it like you're having trouble playing it.
Peter, and actually, can you actually sing part of that bass solo for us?
I'm actually a little low, probably. It's probably, you know, but you know, it's the old rock, but in minor, and it, you know, there's a whole bunch of, you know, wonderful things within that melody. But again, here's the last thing I'll say about the Rite of Spring. So I believe this strongly. The only orchestras that should really play that can play it authentically, in my opinion, are youth orchestras, really, really good youth orchestras who are playing it for the first time, right? So you have really skilled players, but they're terrified like all of us were when we first played that piece. So when I was in the Interlochen National Music Camp back in, and I was 14 years old, and we played the Rite of Spring. I mean, we sounded amazing. It was the Youth Symphony, live performance, phenomenal conductor. It was an unbelievable performance, and yet all of us were terrified on the edge of our seats in the orchestra, you know, that we were going to screw this up, because it was just the concentration that was required was so high. But nowadays, like professional orchestras, it's like nothing. They've played it so many times.
it's too smooth, it's too controlled, it's too comfortable. It's not, yeah.
And I feel the same about Wagner and Strauss, particularly
Mm,
the string parts, which were virtually unplayable back in the day. And I think that they were meant to be these sweeping, waves of sound. They weren't meant to sound, you weren't meant to hear every note perfectly.
right.
And nowadays, they're just
Yeah.
played perfectly. And they're on auditions to be played note
Yeah.
perfectly. I feel like we're kind of missing the point there. And I'm not sure we can go back, you know what I mean? Unless we added more notes.
That's a really great point. I actually had not considered that, and that bassoon solo is a great example. Before we go to our next question, thank you so much, Judith Klotzol. Thank you so much for Ifette Davis for your donations. Again, remember we have a match up to 500 right now. If you donate, it goes for double. Thank you so, so much. If you don't want to go directly here and donate, you can actually go to the Richmond Philharmonic website and donate directly there. You can set up monthly subscriptions as a recurring gift. You can do all of that. Thank you so much for those donations. Peter, you kind of tapped on one question that I think is really interesting. You mentioned your father as well. We had another question from Cameron Taylor, who said, is there generally an accepted path or education / career towards becoming a conductor? And I think you had mentioned how there wasn't a degree that really existed for this, and it became specialized enough to get a degree at one point, and that it's true that most people can, you can, I think David Searle actually had a really good saying, is he said, it's floor, wall, wall, ceiling. You can teach anyone to go floor, wall, ceiling.
Or window ceiling, as we say. I had a band director say that one time. Yeah.
Exactly. But there is something a little bit different about the path of professional conductor. And I would say I've met conductors from all over who I sort of I think I'm maybe at a somewhat younger generation than you, but I've certainly seen conductors who all are at the master's level. They are usually getting an undergraduate degree in some sort of instrumental performance. I don't think a conducting degree exists for the bachelor level. It is more specialized. So usually you get an instrumental undergrad, go for a master's in conducting, though very often I would say conductors are getting both an undergraduate and a master's in an instrument and then going to focus on conducting. But certainly many conductors are proficient at one instrument or a couple, as well as being a conductor. My path was to do undergraduate trombone and music education. And then after going overseas to Egypt for a couple of years, I taught over there. Someone came up to me and said, there's a community orchestra in Cairo that's looking for a conductor made up of expats who are living in the country, in the city. And sometimes these opportunities kind of pop up all of a sudden, and you find yourself in a situation and that you enjoy it. You enjoy the work. I really enjoyed working with people. And then when I came back to the United States, I came back with the express purpose of pursuing a master's degree in conducting, and that's what I got. But yeah, and in the master's degree, you're just constantly conducting all the time, and it's a very focused track. And but yeah, it's a very interesting degree that I think is relatively new as well.
Yeah.
The degree path that is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The interesting thing about conducting that separates it from any other musical area is that as conductors, our practice room really is the podium literally in front of the musicians. That's sort of the unfortunate element to that. So, musicians in an orchestra often have to be very patient with particularly beginning conductors. And this is why it's so important to try to get as much conducting experience as you can when you're in college, so that you're playing in front of other students who might not be so judgmental of your lack of skill and that sort of thing. Because we can be studying our scores absolutely without the orchestra in front of us. In fact, that's imperative. But and we can be practicing certain gestures. But at the end of the day, the gestures that we give have a reaction from the orchestra itself, and you can't know if you're actually being effective in your gesture. You can say, read in a textbook, okay, do this and do that to get this to happen. But until you've actually done it, it's like reading a book about driving a car and learning about
Yeah.
how weight you should put down on the gas pedal or the brake pedal and this sort of thing and how much to turn. And you can just memorize everything in a handbook on how to drive a car. But until you've literally sat behind that wheel and driven the car, you don't know how to do it. And that's really what ultimately is at stake with conducting. And whereas every other instrument you play in the orchestra, you can practice at home and you can hear what you sound like as you're playing. It's important for you to blend with the rest of the orchestra, which is why rehearsals obviously are so important with everybody else. But that is the big difference between conducting and playing. And I will say this, to answer the question that was raised here, there are undergraduate degrees in conducting now. They are popping up more and more, and that sort of troubles me a little bit because I am a firm believer that it's absolutely imperative that you have learned an instrument, even if it's piano. And of course, there are many famous pianists who went on to become conductors of major symphonies. I think it's easier for pianists to conduct major symphonies because everybody already knows how to play their instrument and they're just looking for inspiration. When you're on the major symphony level, they don't want you to tell them how to play their instrument. They just say, what do you want to hear from me? And how am I inspired through the music? And then they'll give that to you. And so if you're somebody that studied for many, many years a particular instrument and you mastered that instrument, then and only then do I feel that you can then translate that to conducting, because you have to be able to have expressed yourself. I talked about creating earlier. It's so important that you've mastered, and I'm not saying you have to be amazing at it. I'm talking about just mastering it at a level where you feel comfortable being able to express what you want to express inside on your instrument, whether it's a violin or a trumpet or a piano, because then you have a sense of how to communicate through music, and then you can do that then from the podium. Obviously, you have to learn the techniques involved as well, but that's one of those things that can be missing. So I think it's really important if somebody is looking to become a conductor. And I didn't necessarily want to become a conductor early on. In fact, none of my degrees are in conducting. All of my degrees are in violin and orchestral studies up through my doctorate. But I did conducting all through those degrees. And I'm not knocking conducting degrees because I think I would have learned a lot more. I mean, I learned an enormous amount going through the Leonard Slatkin's National Conducting Institute, which was a little bit different because it wasn't just about conducting, it was about being a music director. So there you're learning about everything having to do with crisis management and personnel and the chemistry between you and other people and managing, because it's not just about the music that you're conducting in rehearsals or concerts, it's about people. It's about working with people and fundraising and working with a board of directors and programming and all of those other things that go far beyond what you do on the podium itself with a baton. So those are, people really want to pursue the art of conducting. I do recommend getting degrees in it and going to as many workshops and getting many opportunities on the podium, but don't ever let go of yourself as an instrumentalist. That's so.
It informs everything you do on the podium as well. I'm really surprised that there aren't not more vocalist conductors. I think that would be, because you're really singing, I think that would be, it's all really, and for me, instrumental playing really comes down to singing as well.
Well, and you should mention that because, of course, our next guest in 2 weeks is going to be human.
And the whole art of vocal conducting.
A vocalist herself, and and she's working with the Richmond Symphony Chorale and Chorus, and she also teaches. She heads up the choral department, I believe, at VCU, as I understand. So, vocalists can be very effective on the podium. I knew another one, actually, tragically just passed away recently, Randy Fleischer, who was in one of Leonard Bernstein's final classes at Tanglewood. And he taught at Catholic University, and I had played under him. He had one of those Exxon grants to be the assistant conductor of the National Symphony under Mstislav Rostropovich, Slava. And he's a very talented conductor, and he came from a choral background. So it can really be very effective. But yeah, any way that you could be expressing yourself through music first is so.
Agreed.
Yep.
Can I also just jump in and say thank you to Mary Beth Hall for your donation? And oh my God, raised $430 so far. $70 to go until the match. What is that? If two people gave 30, if one person gives 35, I don't know how the math works.
Yeah. So much math, but I'm confused.
Justin Ayers said that he agrees with the conducting comments and that dad and brother are conductors, and they'd say the same thing. Both started with pianos. Thank you, Alex Gorosky, for your donation. We're going to get there, I think.
Keep it going. We have 3 minutes, everybody.
Oh, we got $20 to go. We can
totally. Just again, recap. This is Cocktails with Conductors. I'm Peter Wilson, the music director of the Richmond Philharmonic, and my great friend and colleague here, the assistant conductor of the Richmond Philharmonic, Will Pattie. We've had such a great time talking to each other, but in front of all of you about all these topics of orchestral music and playing and conducting and things like that. And we hope you'll join us every other Monday. So our next one is, oh boy, October, is it 5th? October 5th, there it is, at 7 p.m. And this has been great. Well, I can't wait to make your cocktail at some point.
Yeah.
The very last drops of this.
Absolutely. If I could only drink tequila.
Drinking mezcal. It's all from the same plant, the agave plant.
And thanks to Tiffany King, guess what? We made 500.
We made 500, baby.
Oh my gosh! Thank you for your donation, Tony. Yay!
So. Continue in the comments. Tell us what you thought of this program. This is episode 1, the pilot. You saw the launch of this bad boy here. We hope you all had a great time, and please tell us what you'd like to see in the future. If we didn't get to your questions, don't worry. We're writing them all down. We have our amazing Jen Myers. Thanks again to Jen for putting this all together for us. She's amazing. We'll collect all of these questions and keep answering them as the weeks go on, so we hope you'll join us. But next time, Erin Freeman's going to be with us. Can't wait to pick her brain on all of these topics as well.
Yes.
Any last words, Will?
I am so excited to talk to Erin. That's going to be a real treat. So please tune back in on the 5th. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock, everybody. Thanks so much. If you didn't see the whole program, I think it's going to be up there on a loop. So we'll see you next time.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Take care, Will.
Take care, Peter. See you, man.
Bye-bye.